Second Kings 20 tells us the story of Hezekiah in declining health. Verse number 1 states that he was sick and near the point of death. Hezekiah was one of the few kings of Judah who was constantly aware of God's actions and understood that the Lord's blessings rested upon the behavior of his people as it dealt with obedience to the law of God. And so the administration of Hezekiah was geared that direction. It can be rightly said that Hezekiah enjoyed a close personal relationship with his Creator, and his legacy is probably best summarized through the words of 2 Chronicles 30 and verse 21, where it states, "He did what was good and right in the sight of God, and he was faithful before the Lord." But now he is facing his own mortality. The prognosis is grim to be certain. And Hezekiah, facing this sentence of death, passionately asks God to allow him a longer life. And the Lord hears his prayer. The desire of the king was granted, but strangely enough, God did not tell Hezekiah the news directly. Instead, he commissioned the prophet Isaiah to share the information with Hezekiah. And so as Isaiah relays to the king the fact that he would live another 15 years, the monarch has a moment of doubt. And in his doubt, he requests that a sign be given validating the news. And so the Lord honors his need by determining that the shadow of the sun would digress some 10 degrees, providing Hezekiah the validation that he sought. In point of fact, this was Hezekiah's idea that God again honored. Now, this retreat would seemingly correspond with the direction the sun was moving. That's obvious, which is actually the rotation of the earth on its axis. We all understand that. The shadow of the sun has to do with the direction the sun is moving across the sky, which is the earth rotating on its axis. Now, the critics of Scripture argue that a shadow could never retract 10 degrees because that would not only require the planet to stop in its course, but then reverse its rotation. Now, this is interesting. Ancient Jewish scholars, along with early church fathers, believe that the sun did recede in its celestial path. And they attempted to substantiate their opinion by highlighting the actions of Merodach-Baladan, who was the king over Babylon. Evidently, he was so intrigued by the observations made through his astronomers that this event caused him to send messengers to Hezekiah to further investigate. That investigation is documented in 2 Chronicles 32 and 31. Furthermore, statements were made by Herodotus, and they've been mentioned in defense of this belief. Herodotus was an ancient Greek historian who lived in the 5th century before Christ. He's been called the father of history and was the first known historian as assembling his materials systematically. His work, Euterpe, chapter 142, expressly asserts that the Egyptians had likewise observed strange alterations in the motion of the sun, it having ascended 4 times out of its normal course. That is the first theory as to how the shadow digressed 10 degrees, a miracle of God. But there are many other believers who identify the event in 2 Kings 20 as indeed miraculous, but they posit an alternative theory as to how it occurred. Refraction is the bending of light as it passes from one transparent substance into another. Light refracts when it travels at an angle into a substance with a different optical density. Now listen, please carefully. This change of direction is caused by an alteration in speed. For example, when light travels from air into water, it slows down, causing it to continue traveling at a different angle or at a different direction. Now, scholars who subscribe to this theory reference the fact that Scripture never says the sun went backwards 10 degrees, but only that the shadow moved backward some 10 degrees. The contention is, though, that by no means does this diminish the miraculous, assigning the modification of the atmosphere to the immediate and extraordinary operation of God. In other words, God moved on Hezekiah's part right there and then by messing with the atmosphere, is fundamentally and correctly a miracle. Now, regardless which proposition is correct, the essentialness of this account is based on God's miraculous power. The Bible contains no problem of contradiction in this narrative. It's not contradicting itself, but instead it's highlighting the miraculous power of God. The problem instead rests with the unbeliever who refuses to acknowledge divine interposition. For the Bible is a book of the miraculous. This is Billy Anger saying thanks for joining me on this installment of Defending the Bible. Tell somebody about these programs, found both on YouTube, where you can subscribe, or Facebook, where you can like, as well as on TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, Snapchat, and other forms of media. Thanks for joining with me this week, and I will look forward to our next time together as we defend the Bible.